Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Simulation Theory, and it's from Megacorp Games. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page to find out even more information than I could possibly tell you here. You can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Now, Simulation Theory has a very fascinating theme to it, and that is the idea that's actually been bandied about in some hyper-theoretical scientific circles in real life, which is that we are actually living in a simulation. And that, in fact, if you go further down the rabbit hole, or up the rabbit hole, however the case might be, you were in a simulation within a simulation within a simulation. It could go on forever. You know, fun things to think about, or dark things to think about. So the game uses that premise, and basically what you are trying to do as a player is you are trapped in a simulation that is trapped in another simulation, and you have to get back to the real world. Now, whether or not that's actually the real world is left up to your speculation, but that's how the game ends. So you have to go through these three realities, starting from the bottom and working your way up. And in every reality, for instance, the first one is like a fantasy world, and the next one is like a dystopian prison, and the next one is like an arc going through space. You need to utilize a role within that simulation and use its abilities and its traits in order to overcome challenges within that reality. You'll get special treasure cards that are going to help you try to overcome these challenges, and if you can find the exit and ascend to the next reality, you're going to get more points in game terms, points and things like that, and eventually you want to get through all of the different realities, and at the end, whoever has done that the best and the most without suffering too much trauma is going to be the winner of the game. It is, of course, a little more complicated than that, so let me go ahead and give you a brief look at how the game is played with an early prototype copy of the game, and I can't stress this enough, and you can tell this by going to the Kickstarter page. The components that I have here are very bare bones. There will be a board in the final version, higher quality artwork, things like that. So again, use this just as a guide for the gameplay, and then go to the Kickstarter page and see all that the final version is going to have to offer. But in any event, after we're done with this, we're going to come back and discuss the game further. Simulation Theory is a competitive game for 2 to 5 players, although there are alternate game modes you can play in as well that allow for solo play, or more complicated challenge modes that allow for brief collaboration between the players, and so on. For now, we'll talk about the standard classic mode. Each player is trapped in a programmed simulation made up of 3 layers of virtual reality. They'll need to fight different challenges and overcome them in order to ascend to each different layer, and eventually escape back to the real world, quote-unquote, altogether. When one player finally escapes the last false reality, everyone will add up their points, and whoever has the most is the winner of the game. Set up the game by first separating out the cards for each reality: stone, prison, and arc. Each reality has a challenge deck, a treasure deck, and a set of character boards. Shuffle each and place them nearby. Choose one of the realities and use its challenge cards to make a face-down 5x4 grid. The final produced version of the game will have a board to place all the cards. Give each player a random character from the chosen reality, and place it face up in front of them. Each character is thematic to the chosen reality and has 4 color-coded traits, with different values ranging from 1 to 4, representing IQ, EQ, MQ, and BQ. In addition to their sheet, every character gets a set of 2 different colored dice, preferably red and black, unlike what you see here. Finally, make a stock of ascension tokens for later use. Determine the order of play, and then you can begin. Every round of the game starts with a simultaneous planning phase, followed by each player's turn. In the planning phase, each player will secretly take their 2 dice, set them each on a number of their choice, and then set the 2 of them on a trait of their choice, all without letting the other players see. Once everyone has locked in, everyone will reveal their choice. The 2 dice numbers chosen will determine which challenge card out on the board you'll be attempting to overcome by looking at the X and Y axis. For instance, if you set your dice at 3 and 5, you'll go for the 3rd column card in the 5th row. The trait chosen is what you'll be battling the card with. Now flip over all the chosen challenge cards and go into turn order to resolve combat. In the final version of the game, each player will use high-quality standees to indicate their position for the other players. The challenge cards of each of the 3 realities have a value from 0 to 4. Classic mode and challenge mode only have 4 0 cards, while the adventure mode has 8. Every number above 0 is associated with a particular trait that you'll need to use to overcome it. There's also a nasty boss monster in each challenge deck, with 2 difficult trait values to choose from when challenging, and with the added bonus of allowing you to exit to the next reality if you successfully defeat it. Depending on which cards each player chose, combat will play out very differently. If you're the only one to have chosen a particular challenge card, and the trait you locked in with your dice matches the trait of the challenge, then you simply compare numbers. If your trait score meets or beats the value of the challenge, you win. Take the card into your scoring pile, and also take a treasure card from the top of the deck for that reality. Treasure cards can be equipped to one of your stats and give it a +1, 2, or 3 bonus permanently. There are also treasures that increase all of your stats at once. You only have one of each type of card at a time, and treasure cannot carry over to new realities. Lastly, there is an exit card in each deck, which we'll get back to later. If you chose the wrong trait for the card you challenged and flipped over, nothing happens. The card misses you, and you don't fight. But if you had the right trait, but your score was lower than the challenge value, you have lost the battle, and you must pay the penalty. You must either lose a treasure, or you must skip your next turn. If more than one player has chosen the same card to challenge, they must fight each other. The same basic rules apply. Any player that didn't choose the right trait will not take part in the challenge at all. If more than one player chose the right trait, the values are compared. Any player who doesn't meet or beat the challenge card value will be defeated, and among those who do beat the card, the player with the highest value wins and the other players are defeated. In the case of a tie, the tied players roll off at random to see who takes the challenge treasure cards. There are 3 ways to escape the current reality and ascend to the next of the 3 realities. One way is to kill the boss challenge, if it's even out on the board. It's just as likely that someone will find the exit card in the treasure deck first. That card gets revealed to everyone and set on your character, and then you skip the next turn. When you finally get a turn again, shuffle the exit back into the treasure deck of the current reality, discard your character, and draw a new character from the next layer of reality. Then fill in all the holes on the board with challenge cards from the new reality, top to bottom, left to right. Ascended players can still challenge the cards from the lower reality and in fact will automatically win any challenge as long as they choose the right trait. Players still stuck in the previous reality can keep completing challenges for that reality until they're all gone, forcing their way up and dismissing their old characters, getting a new one for the higher reality immediately. Every time someone ascends to a new reality, they get bonus ascension points, kept track of with tokens. Ascending normally is 15 points. If you're the first one to make it to a new reality, you instead get 20. And if you're force ascended, you'll only get 10. The game ends immediately when one player has ascended through all 3 realities. The player who exited is out of the game, but every other player gets one more turn. Then the game ends and points are added up. Add together the values of every challenge card you defeated and claimed, together with all of your points from ascending, and that is your final score. Whoever has the most points is the winner of the game. I'd like to also mention that in describing the classic mode, I'm only scratching the surface of what Simulation Theory has in store in the final version. Already, you can choose to play the game in challenge mode or competitive mode, where either you and your friends can insert an escalating series of challenges, sometimes cooperatively, or simply play in a more casual style. And without a doubt, you'll want to check out the stretch goal unlocked called Ultimate Mode, a much longer and more intense mode that requires the player to complete their own sets of quests for their characters in order to succeed. That is Simulation Theory.
What's really interesting about Simulation Theory, aside from the theme, the theme is the most interesting part of the game by far, and I don't think that should come as a surprise based on what I described in the beginning of the game. But it's also the fact that when you're dealing with such a heavy theme, there is a temptation to make the game as heavy as possible as well. Layer intricate layer upon layer upon layer, just like the game itself, to the theme of the game, to make it as complicated as possible. A lot of games with this kind of heavy theme end up being the sort of big, bulky, cooperative, miniature skirmish type games. But Simulation Theory keeps it basic to let the theme of the game shine through and to keep things moving very quickly. You get your character, it's got your traits, you go out, you try to find as many challenges as you can. Sometimes you're going to run into other players, you get treasure cards to help you out with that, but ultimately you're just stacking up points, stacking up cards, trying to get out as quickly as possible, with monkey wrenches thrown in, like the boss monsters, and like sometimes having to have your character killed. But again, this isn't debilitating. There's no like player elimination in this game. you just grab another character from that reality. And even if you're the last one stuck on a reality level, you can force ascend, you may not get as many points, but you could potentially do better later on. Or maybe you clean out so many challenges that you get tons more points than the other players who just raced up through the other realities. So you have options, there's leeway, and you never feel too overwhelmed. And while the game is simple in some ways, there is a strategic level to it as to how you're going to go, trying to plan out your moves, trying to plan out what traits you're going to use, things like that, and just managing all your different treasure and so on and so forth. So the game keeps it zipping along. It's interesting that there are different game modes. You can potentially play the game solo. I didn't have time to go into all of it and all the details. There's solo modes, there's challenge modes, where you can even have some collaboration between the players and things like that. And that adventure mode, which is a stretch goal, where you have lots more of the lore brought into the gameplay. It feels much more like you are going on a quest. In fact, each individual character has their own set of quest cards that you're trying to get through. You have to work through the board in a very specific way, and you have to fight that boss monster, all of which, together with the high-quality components in the final version, will lend the game a lot more thematic weight in addition to the core gameplay elements. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, and I mean, the theme is going to be interesting to anyone, but if you also like the gameplay, if you like the fact that it's very accessible and quick to learn and quick to set up, but at the same time can have a heavy strategic bent for players who are looking for that type of thing, you don't have to take my word for any of this. Go to the official Kickstarter project page and find out more information for yourself. You can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. That is Simulation Theory from Megacorp Games. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, for supporting our sponsors. Take care.